Sometimes a drug has a story we all think we know, and then, boom, a completely unexpected second chapter begins. Today, we're diving into the really fascinating journey of ivermectin. It's a medication famous for one thing, but now it's being explored for something totally different, the fight against cancer. So, how did a Nobel winning dewormer even end up in an oncology lab? Well, let's get into it. So, here's our roadmap. We'll start with its celebrated past. Then we'll dig into why scientists are even looking at it for cancer and explore the lab science of how it might actually work. After that, and this is super important, we'll look at the state of the evidence right now. And we'll finish up with some key cautions and things you absolutely need to consider. All right, so before we can even begin to understand its potential future, we have to appreciate its past, which is pretty remarkable. I mean, this isn't some brand new compound cooked up last week. This is a drug with a serious track record. That's right, a Nobel Prize. Ivermectin is a massively important antiparasitic drug, famous for its incredible success against awful diseases like river blindness and scabies. It is a cornerstone of global public health, and it's this well-established, well-understood history that makes its potential new job so darn interesting. And that brings us to its second act. So how on earth does a drug for parasites even get into the same sentence as cancer? Well, the answer lies in a really powerful and smart scientific strategy that's becoming more and more common. It's this concept called drug repurposing. The idea is pretty simple. Scientists take existing, approved drugs, ones we already have a ton of safety data on, and they test them against completely new diseases. It's a way to potentially find new treatments much faster and, honestly, more affordably. And ivermectin, it turns out, is a perfect candidate. And here is the big discovery. In the lab, scientists found that this old antiparasitic drug seems to have some pretty powerful anti-cancer properties. And that finding kicked off a whole new area of research, all focused on one big question. Could these results from the lab one day actually help patients? Okay, so what's it actually doing to cancer cells in a petri dish? Well, it's not a one-trick pony. The research suggests it launches this kind of multi-pronged attack. The key idea here is multi-target. Instead of just hitting cancer in one spot, the lab work suggests ivermectin messes with multiple things that cancer cells need to survive and grow. It's kind of like attacking a fortress, not just at the main gate, but hitting the walls, the supply lines, and the command center all at the same time. And this gives us a closer look at that multi-pronged attack. In the lab, ivermectin seems to do a bunch of things at once. It can inhibit key signaling pathways. Think of those as the on switches for cancer growth that are stuck in the on position. It also triggers apoptosis, which is basically telling a cancer cell to self-destruct. On top of that, it can mess with the cancer's local environment, block proteins that protect it, and maybe even help reverse a tumor's resistance to other chemo drugs. And get this, it's not just limited to one or two types of cancer either. The in vitro research, and that just means studies done in a lab on isolated cells, has been surprisingly broad. I mean, just look at this list. We're talking about breast cancer, including that really tough-to-treat triple-negative kind, plus lung, colorectal, and liver cancers. But it doesn't stop there. The research has also looked at gliomas, leukemias, and more. This huge range is a big reason why researchers are so intrigued by it. Okay, we have all this exciting lab data. But this right here is the most important part of our whole explainer. We have to put all of that into context. What happens when we try to go from the petri dish to actual people? And this quote really gets to the heart of it. We've got tons of promising studies done in vitro, in the lab, but when it comes to actual human patients, the evidence right now is limited to just small case series. So let's quickly break down what that really means. Think of scientific evidence like a ladder. At the very top, you have the gold standard, these big, robust, randomized controlled trials. That's the best proof you can get. At the very bottom, you have the earliest, most preliminary ideas, which is where lab studies live. Right now, the research on ivermectin and cancer is sitting firmly on these lower rungs. It's a promising start for sure, but it is a long, long way from the finish line. So, the crucial point here is this. What works on cells in a dish does not always work inside a complex human body. All this evidence is a really promising starting point for more research, but it is absolutely not proof that it works to treat cancer in people. Not yet. So, given that big gap between the lab and the clinic, it's so important to be cautious. And there are some really important points from the source material that we have to keep in mind. This is a big one, a really big one. The authors make it crystal clear. Just because an antiparasitic drug shows some anti-cancer activity does not mean that cancer is a parasite. That's a huge misunderstanding. The drug is working through totally different biochemical channels to fight cancer cells than the ones it uses to fight parasites.
And then there are the major practical questions. We just don't know the right dose for cancer. The drug has physical limits. For example, it probably won't work for brain tumors because it can't even get to them. And this is critical. In the few case reports that exist, it's almost always used as one part of a bigger cocktail of drugs, not as some standalone magic bullet.
Okay, we have covered a lot of ground here, from Nobel Prizes to mitochondrial pathways. So let's just boil it all down. What are the essential things to take away from our source material? Okay, step 1, ivermectin is a legitimate, celebrated, and important drug for parasitic diseases. Step 2, the science in the lab is genuinely exciting, showing it can fight cancer cells in a bunch of different ways. Step 3, and this is vital, that lab science has not yet been proven in large-scale human trials. The evidence is preliminary. Which brings us to step 4. Ivermectin is a really fascinating example of drug repurposing, a field that's full of promise, but one where a lot more research is definitely needed. And that leaves us with one final thought. The story of ivermectin really isn't just about one drug. It's about a much bigger idea, that the answers to some of our toughest medical challenges might just be hiding in plain sight, sitting on our pharmacy shelves, just waiting for a second look.